Hi, I'm Doug Ballinger. Welcome to Logan's Voice. I'm Logan's dad. Today, we're going to dive into something that every grieving parent, sibling, friend, or spouse eventually comes to know: grief triggers. These are the unexpected landmines of emotion that can just show up out of nowhere, and suddenly we're right back at that moment of loss, gasping for air. Sometimes it's a date on the calendar or a scent, a song, a picture you weren't prepared to see. And sometimes it's a moment that should feel beautiful, like someone asking about your child, for example, but it still brings you to your knees. Grief doesn't follow a timeline, it doesn't ask for permission, and it doesn't care if you're in the middle of a joyful event or trying to hold it together in public. That's what makes these triggers so powerful and so important to talk about, because the truth is, triggers aren't just reminders of our pain, they're reminders of our love. And the more we understand them, the more we can respond to them with compassion for ourselves and for others. In this episode, I'll share some of my own experiences with grief triggers, including a few that caught me completely off guard. We'll talk about what these emotional surges mean, why they happen, and some gentle ways to care for ourselves when they do. If you ever feel like a wave of sorrow came out of nowhere, or like you were fine one minute and crumbling the next, you're not broken, you're grieving, and you're not alone. Let's get into it. What are grief triggers? Grief triggers are moments that pull us back into the heartache, sometimes without warning. They're reminders of what we lost and who we're missing, and they can stir emotions that feel just as raw as day one. But grief triggers aren't always obvious. Sure, there are the ones we can see coming, like anniversaries, birthdays, or holidays, but some of them are sneaky: a smell, a laugh, a commercial, or a line from a movie. Even someone else's joy can sting if it reminds you of a moment you'll never get to have again with your loved one. They show up in public places, in quiet corners of our homes, in our dreams. Sometimes they're small and fleeting, a lump in the throat, or other times they may bring full body grief that knocks the wind out of you. And here's what makes it harder: triggers don't always make sense in the moment. You might be having a perfectly normal day, and then out of nowhere, you're in tears. That's not weakness, that's love looking for a place to go. It helps to understand that these triggers are a natural part of grieving. They're not setbacks, they're not signs that you're stuck or not healing. They're reminders that your connection was real and deep and meaningful. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. Here's some common grief triggers: special dates like birthdays, anniversaries, holidays; places. Maybe it's your child's room, a favorite vacation spot, or even a grocery store aisle like it was for me. Songs, music that they loved or music they played during key moments in their life. Objects, an old t shirt, a toy, a note in their handwriting. And, smells and sounds, their cologne or the hum of a car like the one they drove. In social situations, seeing other families intact, hearing parents complain about things you wish you could still complain about. And then there are the invisible triggers, the ones that sneak in through the cracks. For me, sometimes it's a quiet moment at an event, or someone simply saying, "Tell me about your son." It's beautiful and it's brutal. I'll talk more about that in the next segment. But for now, just know, if you've been caught off guard by emotion, if grief showed up uninvited, it's okay. You're not alone in that experience. You're in the company of every person who's ever loved someone so deeply that losing them left a scar. Let me talk a minute about some of the grief triggers that have taken me by surprise, because sometimes the ones that hit the hardest aren't the ones you would expect. I've had moments where I've been completely undone by something as ordinary as the vegetable aisle at the grocery store. I remember one day I was just walking through, doing my best to get through a list, just like anyone else. But when I saw something, it was a can of spinach. I can't even remember what set it off, but in an instant I was frozen because in that moment I could hear Logan's voice in my head talking about the vegetables, joking about how we always bought the same boring stuff. And I just stood there, overwhelmed with tears coming down my face in the middle of the vegetable aisle. That's the thing about grief. It doesn't wait for a quiet, private place to tap you on the shoulder. It just barges in. And then just last weekend, I had another experience, one that was actually beautiful, but still left me in tears. I was at an event, and one of my original grief counselors was there. She came over and introduced me to someone new. I'd happened to be wearing my Logan story shirt. The woman looked at the shirt, saw his name, and said, "Tell me about your son." Now, let me tell you, those words are a gift. When someone genuinely wants to know about your child, it's one of the kindest things they can say. And I was so grateful she asked. But even as I was smiling, the tears came. My eyes welled up, and before I could get a single word out, I had to take a moment. It was like the air was knocked out of me. I took a few deep breaths before I could speak, but once I did, once I found my footing and started talking about Logan, something shifted in me. The pain was still there, but so was the pride, so was the love. And that's what makes these triggers so complicated. They're tied to the deepest parts of our heart. There are, of course, the big ones that I can see coming from a mile away, like his anniversary, May 19th. That one's coming up soon. That day lives in my bones. His birthday, September 23rd. I still think about how we used to celebrate. And the holidays, Christmas especially. We used to go all out decorating. It wasn't just for the season, it was for the magic, for the memories, for the love of it. Now the sparkle of Christmas light feels a little dimmer, a little heavier. And sometimes the trigger isn't a date or a sight or a sound, it's the silence, the empty seat, the fact that I'm here talking about my son in the past tense. I'm sharing these stories not for sympathy, but for solidarity. If you've ever cried in a grocery store, or had to excuse yourself from a gathering, or felt a lump in your throat just hearing a familiar name, you're not crazy. You're grieving. You're human. And you're loving someone who isn't here the way you wish they were. Let's talk a minute about what to do when grief triggers sneak up on you. Because the truth is, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when it hits, it helps to have a few tools to steady yourself in the storm. First, let me say this. You don't have to be okay in that moment. You don't have to smile through it. You don't have to pretend it didn't happen. Grief shows up because love lived here, and it deserves to be felt. That said, when a trigger strikes, here are some ways I've learned to cope, things I've used myself, and things I've heard from others in this grief community who are trying to walk the same road. Breathe. Just breathe. When a wave crashes, it can feel like the air is gone. So before anything else, stop and take a breath. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold it for 4. Exhale for 6. It sounds simple, but in the moment, it's everything. It tells your nervous system, I'm safe and I can survive this. And then name what's happening. Say it out loud or write it down if you can. This is a grief trigger. This is pain, not weakness. This is love looking for a place to go. Labeling the experience gives you a bit of distance and control. It's not all you, it's just one wave passing through. And you can journal or voice memo the moment. Sometimes when I'm caught off guard, I open the Notes app on my phone and record a short voice memo, just a few lines. Just walked past a guy who looked like Logan, lost in the parking lot. That's a release valve. And later it becomes a record of your healing. Or call someone who gets it. That's key. Who gets it. You don't need someone who'll try to fix you. You need someone who'll sit and just be with you. A fellow grieving parent, a friend who won't flinch at your tears, a support group like the ones we hold each Monday night. Because grief shared is grief softened, even if it's just a little. Or get creative and get moving. Grief is heavy. Letting it move through your body can help. Go for a walk, cook a favorite meal, light a candle and play some music. Make something, a scrapbook, a painting, a playlist. It doesn't have to be productive. It just needs to give your feelings a place to land. And then work on building your grief toolkit. Everyone's grief toolkit will look different, but here's what you might include. A grounding object, like a stone, a necklace, or a Logan Story shirt. A short prayer or mantra. A saved message or photo that brings comfort. A list of people to text when it hits. Prepare it like you prepare for a storm, not because you can stop it, but because you can get through it. And when all else fails, just let it happen. Cry in the grocery store. Step away from the event. Let your eyes well up when someone asks about your child. That emotion is sacred. It's not a sign that you're failing. It's proof that your love still lives. I still get caught off guard. I still cry. And I still take deep breaths to keep from being swallowed by the moment. But what I've learned is this. Every time I let myself feel, I make room for healing. And every time I survive another wave, I grow a little stronger without ever having to let go of Logan. And what do we do when others don't understand? One of the hardest parts of navigating grief triggers, especially the unexpected ones, is dealing with the people who just don't get it. You're crying in the store, or you go quiet at a dinner party. Maybe you cancel plans on your angelversary because you just can't do small talk that day. And someone says it. You've got to move on. It's been years. He wouldn't want you to be sad. Let me be perfectly clear. None of that helps. The people who say these things usually mean well. They just don't know how deep this pain goes. They haven't had to bury a child. They haven't stood in our shoes. And honestly, let's pray they never have to. But that doesn't make their words hurt any less. In fact, it can feel like a second wound. Like your grief is being invalidated, dismissed, or minimized. You start to wonder, is something wrong with me? Should I be over it by now? No, you shouldn't, and you're not broken. Grief doesn't expire, especially not the grief of a parent. You don't get over losing your child. You learn how to carry it, and some days that load feels heavier than others. What you can do, though, is protect your peace. When others don't understand, here are a few things that might help you. Set boundaries without apology. You don't have to attend every event, answer every question, or keep everyone else comfortable at your own expense. You can say, I'm having a hard day and I need some quiet. This time of year is especially rough for me. I'd love your support, not solution. And find your people. Surround yourself with those who understand, whether it's other grieving parents, a support group, or just one friend who says, take your time, I'm here. We host a grief support group on Monday nights, and I can tell you, being seen by people who truly know what this is like can be life changing. Hope Movement Coalition and that group of warriors that stand next to me, surround me with their unconditional love, that gets me through more days than you could even imagine. And then educate gently those around you, or not at all. Sometimes you may feel strong enough to explain, I'll always carry my son with me. The tears you see are love, not weakness. Other times it's okay to just walk away. Not every moment requires a lesson. You're not obligated to justify your grief to anyone. And remember, their capacity is not a measure of your healing. If someone can't handle your tears, that says more about them than it does about you. You're not too sensitive. You're not stuck. You're not a burden. You are a parent who loves your child so deeply that love spills out in waves. Some people may never understand that, and that's okay. But the people who do, they're out there. And when you find them, when you let them sit with you in the hard moments, you start to realize you don't have to do this alone. Grief triggers are love's echo. If you've made it this far in the episode, thank you. I mean that deeply. Talking about grief triggers isn't easy. It's vulnerable, raw, and personal. But it's also necessary because the only way we begin to understand our grief is by talking about it, honoring it, and letting others know they're not alone in it. The world may tell us to move on, to stay strong, to get back to normal. But when you've lost a child, there is no going back. There's only forward, with the weight of love and loss stitched into every step. Grief triggers are not signs of weakness, they're signs of deep connection. They are love's echo in our everyday lives. And while they may knock us off balance for a moment, they also remind us that our children are never truly gone. They're in the music, the holidays, the shirts we wear, the faces of strangers, and yes, even in the vegetable aisle at the grocery store. If something recently brought you to your knees, and if you had to step outside, pause mid sentence, or just cry in your car, I hope this episode reminded you that you are not broken, you are not alone, you are still a parent, and your love is still alive. I'll keep saying Logan's name just like I hope you'll keep saying your child's name, because silence doesn't protect us, it isolates us. And our stories, our children's stories, deserve to be told. If this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who might be walking through their own storm of grief. And if you're looking for more support, visit hopemovementcoalition.com. You'll find resources and a community of people that truly understand your pain. And also, please visit logansvoice.com. There you'll find links to other podcasts. You'll find Logan's swag store, because sometimes wearing the message helps start the conversation that saves lives. Until next time, take a deep breath, give yourself grace, and remember, triggers don't mean you're failing. They mean you remember, you love, you carry them with you still. Thanks for listening to Logan's Voice. I am Logan's voice. I am Logan's dad, and I will not be silent any longer.